Hi there, this is Roadmap 2019, and on this program we talk to some of Nigeria's key political actors in its journey to the 2019 elections. I am Ladi Akeredoluale, thanks for joining us. On today's program, my guest is an academic, he's a politician, and he has also served in a top economic policy making position in government. My guest says part of the solution to Nigeria's problem of insecurity is a massive increase in the number of people to be employed by the Nigerian police force, as just one of the features of an overhaul of Nigeria's security architecture. Now, please join me as we talk to a presidential aspirant on the platform of the Young Progressives Party, the YPP, and former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Dr. Kingsley Moghalu. Dr. Moghalu, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us on Roadmap 2019.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Now, let me start from, I was taking a look at your manifesto, and I tried to take it from the vision that you tried to put in place there and place it side by side with the reality in Nigeria today. Yes. So before going to the manifesto, let's take a little time to talk about the realities.
Yes.
What do you make of our current political situation in terms of how it has grown or developed since 1999? Do you think that, in spite of what many people would call the hiccups, that we are moving generally in the right direction? Would you?
I think we are moving towards the right direction for two reasons. First of all, even though the integrity of the electoral process still is not anywhere near where it should be in terms of transparency or trust and confidence by the political actors who are contesting for elections, and even by the citizens, which is what makes many people not want to vote, because they say, does my vote count? It doesn't. So there's a general apathy because people don't trust the electoral process to produce transparent outcomes. So that's a big problem. Nevertheless, even in the context of that, it's not as bad as it used to be several years ago, when there was open snatching of ballot boxes, stuffing of ballot boxes, writing of election results, and then, so those types of things. So there is some slight improvement in that context, but the wounds inflicted by those first 10, 12 years of the democratic experiment since 1999 have been very deep in the psyche of Nigerian citizens. And so they simply don't trust the electoral process. Number two, despite all this, an incumbent president was voted out of office in 2015. Many people did not believe it could happen. And so for that to happen, I think it shows some progress in the evolution of democracy in the country. But I want to say again that we're still very far from where we should be. The process is not as good as it should be, and the outcomes, to some extent, or in fact to a large extent, have been generally pathetic.
Now, many people would identify some of the things you've talked about as being peculiarly Nigerian as problems, that they're peculiarly Nigerian problems.
Sure.
Population size, the diversity, the numerous logistic challenges that will be faced by institutions charged with electoral processes, the attitudes of the voters themselves, the level of literacy in the country, and all that. Now, if one were to take some of these as maybe mitigating factors, if you like, would you then say that, on balance, as at now, where we are preparing for 2019, you have cause for hope?
No, I wouldn't say that. Let me tell you why. We do ourselves a great disservice in this country when we make excuses for failures. We are supposed to be civilized human beings. We are supposed to be an independent country. We're supposed to be able to run our own affairs. That is the basis on which we fought for and obtained independence from Britain in 1960. If 60 years after 1960, we're still making excuses for being able to run a ballot exercise properly, making excuses for various kinds of failures, I wouldn't call that serious progress. I would call it serious failure. So we should now begin to say to ourselves, enough of the excuses. Enough of the explanations. Diversity is not an excuse. There are many countries in the world that are diverse and still do elections successfully, run successful democracies, have stable societies, have very good and thriving economies. There are many countries in the world which have huge populations, large populations like ours, like Brazil, like China, which have actually turned those factors of large population size into a benefit. So the problem in Nigeria is that we have the ability to do all these things, but something is broken in the chain of causation. That thing is as follows. We have allowed the worst to emerge as the people in authority. The best have walked away from politics and allowed it to be an exercise for many people, not all, but many people who have less than impressive credentials for the positions they hold. That's the problem. So when the society is governed or misgoverned by the elements in that society who are not the most superior ones, it holds down the progress of the society for decades, for generations, and that is what is happening in Nigeria. Who can break this chain? Only the Nigerian citizens can break it. The question is, do they recognize that
that was going to be my next question?
Yes.
Because we've just had elections in Ekiti State.
Yes.
And from many of the election observers and so on, yes, there are no incidents of ballot snatching or violence in terms of carting away election materials and so on. But that's been replaced now by outright vote buying. That is, you vote for this party, you get this amount of money.
So you see, a very clever way of maintaining the same cycle of ineffectiveness, of failure. It's a cycle of failure. Do you know what the problem is? The problem begins and ends in our minds. Development begins in the mind. And until we change our mindsets, or we have leaders who will use their leadership authority to change the mindsets of Nigerians, because they themselves have a mindset that is more attuned to progress. That is to say, they have what we call a world view. It's a phrase I use popularly, and I am known for it. I like that term. It's a powerful term, a world view of transformation. There are 7 components of a worldview. The first question is, why is the world the way it is? The second is, where have we come from? Where are we going? That where are we going is what we call rational futurology. How should the future look? Then the next question is, what do we do to make the future look the way we want it to look?
Okay.
What is the value system? That's number 4. What is the ethical, what is the strategy? What is the plan of action? What is the knowledge system that the society uses to learn? And then what are the building blocks of this worldview? The problem in Nigeria is that we have not yet had, outside the First Republic leadership, people like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who had a powerful worldview of nationalism for the African continent. Hence, it was called Zik of Africa. Wrote various books like Renascent Africa. People like Obafemi Awolowo. People like Ahmadu Bello. So, the people who fought for our liberation from colonialism had a worldview, very clear. Since after the 1960s, the next time we had leadership with a worldview very powerful worldview was under Murtala Mohammed, the Murtala Mohammed Olusegun administration, Olusegun Obasanjo administration. They had a worldview that saw Nigeria clearly claiming and playing its role in the African continent as the de facto leader of the continent. And they took steps to make sure that this worldview became reality. Since then, it's been downhill. So, without the type of people who have this worldview coming to power through the democratic process in Nigeria, we're just running around in circles.